Good evening, sports fans. Here we are, the AD Vantage Point, back on the air again, out of the bunker, no COVID. We're ready to go here. As you guys know, the AD Vantage Point brings on mostly athletic directors, student athletes, really more or less to discuss what's going on in sports today. But the big thing in sports going on today, especially in high school sports, and as we're going to find out in college and pro sports too, is we have a shortage of officials. And it's a major problem with us. And we've got some great guests with us here today from Suffolk County here in New York. Suffolk County is in Section 11, one of the 11 sections in New York State. And we're just so happy to have a couple of veterans here, veteran officials that can give us the lay of the land, and we can talk about a few of the things that are going forward in officiating. What can we do as spectators, as athletic directors, as student athletes and coaches to maybe help this officiating problem go away sooner than later. So I'd like to introduce on today's podcast, we have Marty Quinn, who's the president of the Suffolk County Lacrosse Coaches Association, Carl Superintendent and Mark Negrin, Suffolk County Football Officials Association. I said it again, Coaches Association, Officials Association, and veterans, not only in their sport, but they've done other sports too. So I want to welcome you guys to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having us.
I appreciate you guys coming in, and we're going to start with Mark, seeing as he came on first before you guys. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go around the room here. Just give us a couple of minutes about yourself, your experiences with officiating.
Thank you very much, Coach. I've been coaching. I've been officiating. You got me doing it. I've been officiating school sports since 2008. I have to say that Carl Superino was actually my first mentor when I became a official back in 2008 in football. Marty has helped me along the way with football and lacrosse, so I know these guys very well. I am the head official for Suffolk County PAL youth football from a strategic point of view, as well as a rules point of view. I'm also the president of the Suffolk County Football Officials Association. And it's an honor to be able to work with these great men and women doing the sports. And, we want to do nothing more than to make sure that these young men and women get to play the sports they love in an environment, an atmosphere that will lead them to success. And that's why I'm sure the other gentlemen on the cast are actually on here for the same reason as I am, to make sure we can send a message out there and say, remember, this is all about the kids, and everything we do is for them. And everybody else needs to know that without an official there, it's only a scrimmage.
I like that. I actually used that on a Twitter feed the other day, and that was a statement being made by a lot of people in a lot of places. Mark, thanks. Carl, how about you?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jim. Yes, these two other guys here were, they've been with us for a long time. I think Marty, 17 years. I've been officiating for 20-something years, football. And I'm the secretary treasurer for the association. And it's a pleasure to work, like Mark said, with all our fellow officials, male and female. We'd like to get more females into the association because of flag football coming up. That's big. That's it.
Appreciate your call, Marty.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks again for having me. So I've been a boys lacrosse official for 20 years. I did football for 17 years, and I just last year I finished my 4th year at girls basketball, and I got involved with officiating because I enjoyed sports. I played sports growing up. I was a football, basketball, lacrosse guy through middle school and high school. I played college football, and I wanted to stay involved, and I didn't have the opportunity to coach due to work requirements. So officiating was the next best thing. I've enjoyed it immensely. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy being around the kids, but I enjoy being involved with athletics, and that's why I do it. And I'm enjoying it ever since.
Great, Marty. Appreciate you too. And I'm going to start with you, Marty. Marty, if we had to say the number one issue right now with the lack of officials, just give me one, because I know there's probably about 5 or 6 right off the top of our heads, and then we'll go around the group here. What's the number one thing in the top of your mind that's causing the problem with a lack of officials?
I would think the intensity and conflict of the intensity of the conflict with coaches, and then B, obviously with parents. I would say that is the number one issue why we are losing officials. And the other thing that we found specifically in lacrosse over the last, I would say 5 to 7 years, we get good numbers to join our class. They do it for 1 or 2 years, and then they leave. And so the turnover is really the biggest issue. We still have a lot of people interested in it, but they just don't stick around very long.
Right. Carl, same question, Carl. You're number one.
So, to piggyback off Marty, what we find as officials is accountability, right? We need accountability in regards to, coaches, parents, and to take a step forward and think, knowing that we're there to do a job and we know they are there to do a job, right? And we need to work together on it, right? And a lot of guys, right, speaking to new recruits, because I bring them into the association, their biggest fear is this right here, the phone, being on YouTube or Facebook, right, with the call, etc. So, social media has a big play in this today, as we all know, and we need to address that as well.
Appreciate that, Mark. We seem to get a common theme here on the number one issue. Is that fit with you too? Is that?
No, I'm gonna tap right into what Marty said about we have an interest with our recruits. They come in, they take the class, they do a year or two, and they leave. So let's get to that. We take a look at our association, and the gentlemen and the ladies that have been doing it for years and years and years have developed a thick skin and have been able to accept and be able to black out that whole white noise that's behind them, no matter what it is. Where new officials coming in don't have that same armor. And when they hear the negativity and they hear the fans screaming and the things that go on in a negative context, they say the same thing as Marty said. They just say, it's not for me. And, and I'm not going to do this anymore because I did this for fun. And it's turning out that it's not. And, that's where the loss is. Like Carl said, it's about accountability. Listen, we go to a game, we have no interest. And I actually do this at my coin toss. I let them know we have no interest in who wins and who doesn't win. The only thing we care about is the game is played by the rules and everybody gets home safe. And we go from there. And it's turned into a world of entitlement out there. So, it's all about them. It's all about me. It's all about, I'm the best type of attitude, which, I can understand within the context of the game. But when they go over the top, that's when it gets into to be problems. And the big thing is, and going back to what Marty said, the coaches set, believe it or not, the coaches set the tone for the attitude of the day. Calm, cool, collected, the game goes on smooth as can be, right, Marty? I mean, then when they get hot and they get, at that high level of octane, the fans feed into that, the kids feed into that, and then it goes the other direction.
I would definitely agree with that. The coaches set the tone. You can obviously always have parents, have their own agenda and get annoyed. But I would say the coaches definitely set the tone, and it can go a long way if they kept things in perspective or just a sense of professionality.
Now let's take a sport like football, because there's no travel football. We don't have that. Every other sport has travel. We don't have travel football, but yet there's still that parent involvement and there's still that angst, and especially from the coaches. But do you think that the pressure to win is one of the reasons why we're having some issues with certain we know certain coaches, but with coaches just trying to survive out there? Do you think that they have that pressure to win? Travel's different. We'll talk about travel in a minute, with lacrosse especially. But what do you guys think about that? I'll take any. Carl?
Yeah. So my point of view, and I've always had a discussion with some of the coaches, and like I said previously, that we're there to do a job and the coaches are there to do a job, right? The coaches are paid to do a job, right? And as an official, I understand that, right? They have an accountability to the athletic director, the school, and the parents, right? Where we as officials have accountability to the youth who are playing the game, right? Number one, right? Coaches, yes, but we're there for the kids, right? I mean, but we get paid for a game. That's peanuts. We're not gonna. We just love the game and we love being there with the kids, right? And I kind of tell the coaches, I get it. You're there to do a job, right? I'm gonna still be doing this game, but if you don't, how can I? I'm trying to look for the word. If you don't mesh, you may be out of that job, right? Because for could be political reasons, it could be, a turnover, but we're still going to be there, right? And I respect the coaches. That's why I respect them. They have a tough job to do because they have to be with the AD, the parents, and trust me, it's a very difficult job these coaches have.
I think it's been made more difficult because some of the onus has been put on for off-season work is actually a part of a lot of contracts now. It's a part of a lot of agreements with some of the unions that there's an expectation that they are going to not just show up on August 22nd, that they're going to work pretty much most of the year to get their teams ready to play. And Marty, were you going to say something to what Carl said? I saw you lean towards.
No, I was. I mean, I think the parents' expectations that they want their child involved with a winning program to learn, life lessons, things that I learned, playing, like I said, football, basketball, lacrosse. And I think it starts at an early age, and I think it goes throughout high school. And I think the coaches, it's getting harder to ref every year. It's getting harder to coach every year. And I think the expectations from the parents of not only winning, but their kids playing, I think it's very difficult. And I think, it takes a special person as a coach to be able to, put that noise aside when it comes to game time and not let that affect them. But again, let's say it's a random Saturday high school football, and this guy, this head coach just got lambasted by some parent because parent thinks his kid should play more. It's difficult, I think, a lot of times for that guy to separate that as he walks onto the field, and now he's dealing with refs that, obviously you're roughing the game and having an impact on the game. So I think the expectation to win, the expectation of their kids have to be great, their players, and being a part of a winning program, I think drives a lot of issues that makes it very difficult for coaches and puts a lot of stress on them.
Mark, did you want to put in 2 cents on that?
Going back to what Carl had said, that the coaches have, they're in a high pressure situation week in, week out. I mean, they work all summer long to prepare for the season, and they put in a lot of time with the kids. They put a lot of time in at home to make sure they have the game plan prepared. They look at film. They work really, really, really hard. And you see that on both sides. And they have one agenda, and their agenda is to win the game. And I understand that 100%. Then you have us as officials. We, as I said earlier, like I tell the kids, we have no bearing. It doesn't matter to us who wins or loses. We want to make sure that time and effort they put in is rewarded by giving them a good, fair, officiated game on a level playing field. And that's what we do. And I've learned that from Marty, and I've learned that from Carl as being underling. I was an underling to both of them for many years before I moved up the chain. And, I learned a lot of things. And it's the kind of thing where the coaches want to win because it's part of their DNA. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coaches. But at the same time, they want to teach their kids to become young men, young women, to be able to be positive impact on society. And sometimes that gets lost in the picture. And as a teacher, an educator, a coach, anytime you're dealing with a student or an athlete, that's our main focus, to make them a better person today than they were yesterday. And we have to get back to that framework where the athletic field is an expansion of the classroom. And we have to make that entire atmosphere a positive one. Listen, Not everybody can win on the scoreboard. And I know my friends have heard this before. Not everybody can win on the scoreboard, but everybody can win every week by being the best sportsman they can be, being kind to their teammate, being kind to their opponent, and making sure that they take something positive out of it. And that's part of the coach's responsibility. So, you got to look at the big picture. It's just not what goes on the field.
And you brought up a good point there. We talk about, sure you guys are familiar, may have heard the term education-based athletics.
Yes.
That's out there. It was something that's been discussed. We talk about it as athletic directors. We're actually rewriting it right now because in the original document 22 years ago, the 4 C's that they talk about, civility, competency, so on and so forth, it only dealt with the student athlete, and we were looking just to educate the student athlete. We found now that we have to expand that, not just to the student athlete, but to coaches, to athletic directors, to parents and spectators included, and try to apply that. But if you ask someone to define the word sportsmanship, you'll find that most people don't really know what that word means. They think a good sport is you shake hands after the game kind of thing. That's showing good sports. Maybe helping somebody up is good sportsmanship. But there's sporting behaviors that need to be applied. So I'm going to segue into when you get to a game, and no matter what it is, no matter what sport it is, do you always feel safe when you get there?
I would say in football, I always felt safe. On a varsity crew, there was 5 of us. So I never ever felt unsafe at a football game just because there's strength in numbers. There's 5 of us, we come in, as a crew. A lot of times football, again, Friday night, Saturday, I think there's an easier way for the school to get more security people there. So in football, never, ever had a problem. Girls basketball, to date, again, it's only been 4 years. I've never had a problem. But lacrosse, there've been some times where things have gotten, a little rough as far as just verbal, never physical. So I would say lacrosse, is more of an issue than say football and anything I've experienced in girls basketball.
And there's an interesting dynamic you brought up, and I'm going to let Carl and Mark talk about how they feel about safety.
Yeah, we've never had an issue regarding, like Marty said, about being challenged. There are instances in priority games, right, where the contest is heated, right, and like Mark said earlier, the senior officials have that thick skin, right? So you can brush it off and walk off the field. But sometimes these, the younger officials, sometimes may engage, and that's the part that we have to fix as an association. But all in all, I mean, coming onto the field, there's no issues. But on the other end, walking off the field, right, could be an issue. Okay, that's the biggest concern the officials have, is at the end of the game, because one side wins, one side loses.
Usually the way it is.
Yep.
Mark?
Yeah, to lead into what Carl said, 50%, 100%, 100% of the time, 50% of the population does not like you. And that flipped from 1 minute to the next. So that's exactly what Carl said. And it's in an entire game type of situation. I personally have never had a feeling of fear or angst or negativity or nervousness walking on the field or off the field. I believe it's all about a presence and a confidence that we instill. There are situations where, like Carl and Marty both alluded to, where going on, you're good, coming off, it's not so happy. But, it's about the thickness of your skin. And, I'll clearly say to a coach when they start getting a little, over the edge, I'll say, hey, coach, listen, when the game ends and the horn sounds, I'm going to still be here. You might not be. And then it stops. I think as officials associations, we need to be able to share the concept that this game is going to happen no matter what. Okay. And if you want to be respectful to the sport you coach, or the parent wants to be respectful and honor the hard work their child is doing to be on the field, they need to behave like everybody else. And, and Marty and Carl will tell you this, you'll see there's certain parents that will go to a game and they will separate themselves in the stands to be away from the noise, not to be part of it, but to be away from it, because they don't want to be associated with the negativity. Okay. So, again, I have a confidence level that, I don't have any issues, but I do realize, again, going back to what Marty says, I walk on the field, two of my crewmates and my sons, they have my back always. My other guys are like Marty, we're in strength in numbers. There's 5 of us together. But, at the end of the day, we control what we do the best we can. We can't control anything outside of the field. We're within those white lines. We're in charge and we do the best we can. But everything.
I mean, it's really, obviously officiating is all about judgment, and of course we can't protest judgment. But the reason why I asked that question about safety is I was down in North Carolina at a conference, and at the athletic director conference, and 2 assigners came in and talked about a survey they ran with officials. And we would have thought that down there in North Carolina that the number one issue would have been money, that they don't make enough money because they're not very well paid. They might get $50 for a lacrosse game and maybe $60 for a football game down there, where we're not making millions here. We're talking about, $100+ but today's market, that's still not a lot of money. You can't really make a living on that unless you did 4 games a day for 5 or 6 days a week. But the number one item with them was safety. And what they've done down in North Carolina is applied what they do in football and basketball up here in New York. Every time an official shows up at a game, there's a security person or someone assigned to them to lead them onto the field, to walk them off the field. And they even have, most of the schools, they've been basically directed to have the official fill out a form before they come to the contest. And it's a menu of a snack and a drink that they could have. And I know you've probably gotten bottles of water from schools when you've gone there, but there's the part about getting people to come and want to come back to your place. Because I know there's schools out there that you can tell me right now, I can't believe I got to go here again. I can't believe I got to go with that crowd. I can't believe I've got to go with that place. But do you think if you're made to feel safer by the athletic director and the athletic department there as you come, do you think that might help to entice people to say better things about schools? I'll talk about parents in a minute, by the way. That's going to be a separate thing.
Well, I mean, I think I would think that and the biggest issue we see, Jim, speaking for lacrosse, is at the junior high level. At the varsity level, when it comes to lacrosse, and I'll use football as the same example because 90% of times I'm reffing a lacrosse game on a football field. And at the varsity level, there's a football field, then there's about a 10-foot wide track,
Yep.
then there's a fence, and then there are the stands.
Yep.
But at the junior high level, a lot of times there's no security, nothing there. And secondly, those parents are 6 inches from the field.
Yes, they are.
6 inches. And so as a guy's running down and some mom or father is screaming at them. So we're trying to push hard for Section 11 to address the security issues at the junior high. Again, every school district is judged on a high school. It's the same thing with sports. I realize it's not a priority, but if you want to try to help, slow, the trend of officials leaving or not having officials, we got to do a better job at the junior high level. So these guys have a better experience, these men and women officiating games, and therefore they stick around and climb up the ladder.
Marty, that's a great observation that, even as an athletic director, I cringed when I go to a soccer game at the middle school. And obviously this area, you get two schools that are very well attended by parents because they can get out of work at 4:00. And they get their chairs, they sit them down, and you're right, Marty, they're 6 inches from the sideline.
Yeah.
And they're very vocal. Mark, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, piggyback on top of what Marty was saying, because I do girls and boys basketball as well. And, Marty, correct me if I'm wrong. It was a horrible situation, but at the best time to be official was during the COVID era when the students were playing and the parents were not in the gym.
Absolutely the best. In girls basketball, it was the best. It was the greatest.
The kids played, the coaches coached, The table did the table. Everybody had a smile coming in, going out. It was never an issue. So it was a terrible time for what we went through, but at the same time we realized and we saw firsthand where the actual variable was. It was in the stands. And,
We know that. So now here's what happened last week up in Lake Placid at the New York State Public High School meeting. They brought up the potential, I'm sure you guys heard about the potential for a parent that is ejected or a spectator that's ejected would have to sit the next contest, just like an athlete who gets a red card or is ejected from a game. There was no resolution at the meeting. They tabled it because this is an item that throws an athletic director into the fray, which, with all due respect, as a former athletic director for 23 years, I've been in the stands and I've had to deal with these things, but I've never ejected or suspended a parent until my very last year from any contest. So the official's expectation is, and I'm going to ask you guys, point blank, do you think the athletic directors can do that job?
Yeah,
Do you think?
Yeah. Section 11, right? They work with us. If we eject the parent, right? They contact the AD and that parent sits out the next game. Because I had a situation at a school last year where the guy was abusive. I threw him out of the game, right? It was a varsity game. They assigned me to a JV game as a substitute at the same school. And guess what?
He's there.
Parent was there. I went over the AD. I says, the game's not going to continue until he's gone. And the AD said, wow, he was not supposed to be here. So Section 11 does take it seriously, right? From a parent perspective. Right?
And I think the athletic directors would take it seriously if they felt they had, and I'll say this too, felt they had backing from their own people in the school district, whether it's the Board of Education or the superintendent. I mean, how many superintendents or board members have been thrown out of games over the years? A couple. Mark?
Yeah, I was just, I'm going to piggyback on that. I'm the lead official for PAL youth travel football throughout Suffolk County. And what has happened in our sport is 5 years ago, we had 120 officials that were rotating through the games on Sunday. We're down to 60. I don't have enough officials to be able to cover the games that are played every weekend. So what we did, and I got the backing from the Suffolk County Police Department on this. If a coach he gets only one flag, not two. So if he gets an unsportsmanship flag for behavior or abusive attitude towards an official, another coach, a parent, whatever the case may be, he's ejected and suspended in the next game. But what took us one step further, talking about backing, the organization that he coaches for is fined $500. So now what happens is the organization is now going to make sure that their coaches behave because they don't want to get fined. And on top of that, if they don't pay the fine before the next week's games, that organization will not get any home officials. So now you're playing a game without officials. So now it's a scrimmage, so on and so forth. And we had our first coaches and / directors meeting last week for PAL, and I unveiled this. And don't you know, I had nothing but praise. It's about time somebody took a stance. And listen, going back to what Carl said, Section 11 is backing us. If we could get the districts to do the same thing where, hey, listen, coach, if you do this and you get a flag or you get suspended, you're sitting, okay? Because you don't only represent that football team, you represent that district and the entire community, okay? So we're trying at the lower end to try to bring up the increase in proper etiquette and behavior, and who knows, maybe it'll kind of follow suit down the way. I know, Carl, you went up to the conference for football, and didn't they say there was a report now we had to fill out on a weekly basis? You want to share that?
Yeah. So up in New York State in Syracuse, we had the secretaries meeting, and when a player gets injured, right, we have to fill out a liability report, right? Anything if he was injured above the neck, if he was transported by ambulance. Now they're going to be using the same form, right, for any parent coach excessive abusiveness, right? So we're going to have to fill out that form, send it to the state, and send it to section. And they want to track the number of these abusive coaches they have, right, across the state. Because, like Mark said, he has 60 individuals, right, officials doing PAL. Right now, we have 114 officials to cover all the varsity games, right? And when I first started, we had 202 officials.
Yeah,
It's bad.
yeah.
It's bad. And what's going to happen? The kids are going to suffer from this.
And Marty, with lacrosse especially, I use the analogy that when we were kids, well, maybe you're a young guy, Marty, maybe not so much, but a little more veteran. But when we were kids, if you had a color TV, you were it in the neighborhood. If you had a pair of Chuck Taylors, instead of PF Flyers, you were at. If you had a second car, now everybody's got these things. Everybody's got an iPhone 13, an SUV, and their Jordans. I think our kids have become our status symbols with parents. And I think that the money that they're investing into kids is maybe part of the reaction you're seeing on the lacrosse fields by these parents, that they've invested so much into this and have been sold a bill of goods by some of these travel teams out there that are just there for the money. That how do we fight that? And then I'm going to add in, what about NIL that's out there now? What do you think? Name, image, and likeness, where a 16-year-old kid can get a sponsor in New York and make money off of it. So, Marty, do you think that that's got a lot to do with some of the issues you're seeing?
I mean, I think travel, strictly speaking, from an officiating standpoint, the travel is an issue again because of this. Parents spending a lot of money joining these travel teams. In lacrosse, from literally May 1st, literally to July 31st, there are tournaments, multiple tournaments going on every weekend, everywhere in the Northeast. There are not enough officials to cover every single one of those games. So
Wow.
What happens is an official does 10 games in a day. Now the game is 55 minutes long, but I don't care how great you are. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. After 4 or 5 middle school or JV level travel lacrosse games, you're done. And so games 6 through 10, you're not at your best. You could be very bad. The parents are getting ramped up because the reffing is not doing a good job. But my point that I try to tell people is, when you're at these travel tournaments, I don't care how great the ref is. If he's doing his 10th game, he's not going to be very good. And you're not going to get a good effort. And then again, things are going to, escalate. Parents are going to scream. And the other issue that we find with the travel is a lot of these, and I would say, travel teams, they try not to hire dads. They will hire players, college lacrosse players, young 23, 25, 27, even up to 30-year-old. Some guys are school teachers to get away from daddy ball, to make it truly an objective team. And, a lot of guys, they don't want to sit there and get screamed at by some 24-year-old kid, doing some, lacrosse game in Nowheresville, New York in the middle of, June. So travel is an issue for a multitude of reasons. And then the last thing I'll say real quick, there was a book, Jim, you may be aware of it. It was written by a guy, I believe it was ex-NFL football player. And I believe he started coaching in inner city school. I want to say down in Baltimore for years, did a great job. And he came up with this, I believe, philosophy or feeling that specifically males, not talking about girls, but males, men are judged throughout their whole life over 3 things. From the time they're, out of the womb until they're, through college, it's athletic ability. How much of an athlete is your son? How much of an athlete are you? When they're done with college or even in college, probably till, maybe the 30s, sexual conquest, is this guy a stud or not? And then, from early 30s, maybe mid 30s, the rest of their lives is how much money do you make? And his philosophy was that's how men or males are judged their whole lives in those three segments. And he just believes it's a lot of pressure on young people because he believes society looks at their total worth by how athletic they are, or how good of an athlete or player they are. And I remember, hearing about that years ago. I forget the name of the book. I apologize, but I relate to that, and I think there's a lot to that, and I think that drives a lot of this stuff that we deal with in youth sports.
That's a great point, Marty. I think I got to look. I've never read that book, I said, but I think it's something I'm going to go look it up. I'll Google it as soon as we're done here and try to find it, because I think that's important. I think that's very important. And as we're kind of winding down here, but I want to shift a little bit. So we've kind of defined the number one issue here, and that's really parent and coach behavior, or spectator and coach behavior, and even the student athletes to a certain extent. I think the student athletes, it's a rarity when student athletes are that belligerent. Usually the coach can handle that part of it and get in between them before they get tossed, but it does happen, and we know that. But the turnaround is always going to be from the coach, and this. Well, you guys aren't in shape to do this. There's no hustle. There's no this. There's no that. Then I'm going to give you a chance, obviously, to talk about that. But is that just the coach looking for an excuse? In that case, do you think? And that's what I think it is. Whenever a coach told me that, I said, you're just looking at an excuse. I said, these people are out there doing the best that they possibly can based on the situation. But we have a situation now where, like you said, preferred games, Carl, we might not be getting the top officials because they're just not there. They're at another preferred game, or they block that day out. But what do you say to people that say that to you guys as heads of your associations?
I'll speak to that real quick. We talked a lot about parents and coaches. Officials have a responsibility. And Jim, I'll be honest with you. I mean, there are officials. I mean, like every aspect of life, you could probably speak to it as an athletic director. There were great athletic directors, there were good athletic directors, and there were probably athletic directors that weren't very good. And that is in every aspect of life, in every profession. And it's the same thing with sports officiating at any level. I don't know any umpires in Major League Baseball except for Angel Hernandez. I think it's Hernandez, because the guy gets highlighted all the time for things he blows. But my point is, we as officials, we have a responsibility. You got to be in shape. You got to be in the right frame of mind. You got to block out or compartmentalize whatever's going on in your life. So when you step on a field, that is what your focus is, not what's going on in your life, whether it be work or personal. You got to be in shape, and you got to know the rules. And we have a responsibility to do that. So I wouldn't say it's just an excuse. Sometimes he's right. There are officials that are just not very good. There are officials that don't take this as seriously as they should. And we have to work on that as an association to get them to training and also encourage them. And then if not, have conversations that maybe they should go down a level or something to that effect. But it's not all coaches and parents. Officials have a responsibility as well.
And I'm not looking to point fingers and say, okay, transfer the blame to someone else. But these are all identifying factors of, if we're going to change the culture of this, we have to identify and be accountable for those things. I'm so glad to hear that, because people have never heard that before, that the officials actually do talk to officials about getting in shape, knowing the rules better, hustling, doing those things. They think it's just get your game and go. I tell you that. And that's what I hear out there. That's what I hear. And we have to break that down. The years I officiated softball, it was the same thing. You had your good and your bad, and you tried your best to get done what you needed to get done. I want to segue that in there, and maybe you guys have comments too, Carl and Mark, but I want you guys to talk more about what are we going to do to get more people involved in officiating. And Mark, you and I were talking about this before we went on the air, but that's where we need to go next. So you want to talk about that, Carl?
Yeah. So being up at the state, and I had mentioned this to Mark as well. I came back and, I was talking to one or two guys up there, and we said, you know what, why don't we reach out to Suffolk Community College or Stony Brook, right? And make officiating a PE class, a 1-credit class, right? Where you may have, especially Suffolk County Community College, they're living here, they can make some bucks, pay that tuition, right? So, I reached out to Tommy Combs, and we're gonna, he's gonna work with me to go to Suffolk Community College and present a program that possibly we could make happen. So I think, and then also going out and having discussion. You see a kid on the field. Hey, want to be an official? Right. I'm the timekeeper at Smithtown, and I see a 20-year-old walk into the gym. I says, "Oh, want to be an official?" Not really, but why not? Then I tell them, and then they may think about it. So you have to advertise. You have to get it out there.
Now, I know a couple of officiating organizations. They'll set up a table at the tournament, at the county tournament, and man, that you guys do that too, the football and lacrosse guys.
Mark, you can expand on that. We did it this year.
Yeah, we actually did that in the Suffolk County and the Suffolk County Championships at Stony Brook at all 4 divisions. We had a table set up and we were giving out flyers, recruiting. Section 11 bought in and they posted it on their website. Every AD got a copy of it and they put it up. And like I was saying earlier, coaches, we were able to recruit 18 high school juniors and seniors that actually are currently playing football to take the officiating course. And I taught the course from a national federation rule book perspective in a 10-hour, 5-week course. And then when we did the PAL addendum, we did that on a separate day. But the point of the matter was we have 18 new, fresh, football-hungry officials starting at the PAL level, okay, doing 5- and 6-year-old flag and 7- and 8-year-old modified, to be able to get them exposed to the game, to the coaches, to the parents, to the entire realm. And then hopefully, if I can get 50% of them that stay home and stay in school here, they take the Section 11 courses and become officials. And this is something that we need to do at every sport. Try to entice the kids that are playing at the upper end of school, that are staying home, to become officials, to stay involved in the game, to be part of the game they love, and then pay it forward and make a little extra cash on the side. And, we were successful with that.
Marty, what are you doing with lacrosse?
We reach out to Coaches Association. We've never done what they just did at the Suffolk County Championships. We will try to do that moving forward. It's a great idea. So we reach out to the Coaches Association, and we reach out through our assigners that work with the travel programs or the organizations that put on youth tournaments. And we make up a flyer and we ask them to blast it through their network. We look for, obviously, ex-players is, really the best, or what we, yearn for. But parents, some parents may have enjoyed watching their, son or daughter play lacrosse. And, now their daughter or son is done and they still want to be involved in the sport. That's someone. The other thing we do go after is, quite frankly, coaches that have had enough. And we've had we have about 7 or 8 officials in our association that coached either at the high school or middle school level, and they didn't want to coach anymore, still wanted to be involved, make some money. And so now they're officiating. So those are the things that we do. I think setting up a table at the county final is a great idea, but we're constantly networking through the travel and or Coaches Association for recommendations or people that are interested.
That's great. One of the things that came out of North Carolina too was incentives to sign up. I know you guys don't have large coffers of money to give out freely, but is it a big expense to get started as an official with some associations? What about something along those lines? Not that you would give them a signing bonus, but I know that some associations would. The first couple of games you're working basically for free because you got to pay for everything. You got to pay for dues. You got to pay for uniform. You got to pay for a few things. What do you think about that, Marty?
We what we do is we work with people when the first class, and even before that, the email we send out, this is what your expectations are. Here's what you could make, both in season through section, as well as you get hooked up with Little League and or travel. But we work with them, put them on a payment plan if they have to do that. We don't make them pay next year's dues. Like the association pays 2023 dues were actually paid this year, where the new first year guys, they just have to pay for 2022. They don't have to pay 2023 till the start of the following year to help just spread out that cost. The only other thing we've thought about doing, we haven't implemented it, is an existing member, if they bring somebody in, that they, don't have to pay their dues for that year. But we haven't instituted that, but I believe boys basketball East End, I believe, does that because their numbers are severely down.
I like that. If I give them a little finder's fee for bringing
That's
someone
correct.
in,
That's correct.
I kind of like that. You guys football do anything like that?
Yeah, it's similar what Marty said with the new officials. They need to pay the 2022 fees, right? Because we have to pay the state so they get certified, right? And then then they don't have to pay till January 1st because I have to pay the state on January 15th. So they have 6 months to save up. And again, we work with them. We know it's hard times, inflation's there, right? They got to put food on the table. So we work with them. So
I like that, Mark.
What I was going to share with, Carl shared with what we do from a monetary perspective. But what I was going to share with you, Coach, is that what our association has done is we've reached out, and I know Marty has done this in lacrosse, reaching out to the president of the Coaches Association for our specific sport. And we're going to have on a either weekly or twice a month conversation with their exec board and our exec board about the good, the bad, and ugly, which has transpired over those first 2 weeks. And then we get in touch with where the issues were. They'll go to the coaches, we'll go to our officials, we'll talk about whatever was, and it's not going to be a hate fest. It's not going to be beat up each other type of thing. It's going to be constructive to learn from what's gone on. And Marty will share with you, and as well as anybody, Coach, because you were involved in the whole process, the rating system that we go by really isn't fair and judgmental in a proper way. And we don't find out about it until 3 or 4 months after our season is over. And there's no way to relate it back to what game did I do this in? And we don't even know what we did. We just get a number. And we're trying to, as an association, make our members better. And I know Marty's working on this real hard because, listen, I'm a lacrosse official. I sat in a room when he first became president, and it was like night and day. Marty, and I told you this in your first email, in my first email to you after your first meeting. It was like a light bulb went on, man. Let's talk about it. Let's all get on the same page. Carl and I talk every day, 3 to 4 times a day, whether it be text message, email, or on the phone. What are we going to do to get better? Who are we going to move? What are we going to talk about with Pete and Tom over at Section? What can we do as an organization to improve our product? Because again, going back to what Marty said, okay, the product has to be what the coaches and the parents and the kids expect weekly. But their interpretation of what we're doing may be inaccurate because they don't know the rules. They think they do, okay? And then they're judging us on something that may be wrong, okay? So this is why the conversation is. So I have a discussion with the president of football Coaches Association, and he says, oh, in this game, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what, coach? Your coach is right. We'll look into that. Or coach, your coach was wrong. The rule actually changed 3 years ago, and, they got to get on the same speed as we do. Marty will tell you, Carl will tell you, every year we have to take a 100 question exam to continue our certification to be able to officiate. Okay. And in football, we actually take 3 exams. We take a part 1, a part 2, and a 100 question mechanics test. So when we walk on the field, we're prepared. Going back to what Marty said, not everyone takes that as serious as they should. And that's what we're doing as presidents and executive board members to make sure our membership is not the reason why.
And you brought up a great point about rating cards, and we're going over, but that's fine. I can talk. I hope you guys don't mind going a little long on this because
No problem.
this is really important stuff. the rating card there's rating cards all over the country. Everybody's got a rating card. It's different. One of the issues I had with the rating card as the athletic director was it wasn't sports specific. It was too generalized, number one. And number two was the coaches did not rate correctly. They were too lazy. They didn't want to give a 1 or a 2 because they know that the AD would have had to then make a phone call or bring you in to talk about it. So you either got the all 3s or all 5s and it was very frustrating as an AD to see how they would rate certain officials. And, after you see what the kind of job they're trying to do, or it wasn't done the way it's supposed to be. But you not getting the data was my other problem. The fact that you didn't get the data until after the season, weeks, months after the season, there's no reason for that. Even if it was twice a year, even if it was early in the season after maybe a quarter of the games, and then after 3/4 of the games. You got a third or 2/3 if you want to do it.
Jim, we've had situations where we go up for the playoffs, right? And we go to section and we need to get the ratings, right? Top crew, bomb, right down the list. And they come to us and says, not all the ratings are in. We only got 3 ratings from one school for the whole year, right? Whose fault is that?
Well, one of the things that I tried to do, I'm not tooting my horn or anything, but there's our school today is a scheduling company. If you're a Nassau County official, they're using them now. I developed a rating card that had a notification system built into it. In other words, once the game was over, coach had 48 hours to complete the rating card. If he didn't, the AD would get pinged, and then they had 96 hours to get it done and completed. If it fell out, then that school could possibly be ineligible for the playoffs, was the way we were going to go with it. I don't know where Nassau's going with it. I'm not an AD anymore, so I don't know. But in this age of technology, for you guys not to get somewhat immediate feedback from us, it's got to change. That has to change. And I think that they can go in that direction at some point. I mean, Marty, you'd love to get the information as soon as possible, about how you guys did, right?
Of course, and not only as soon as possible, but what I beg the coaches to do is not just the number, give us information. If someone did a great job, guys love to hear they did a great job and say why they did a great job. If somebody struggled, this is why I think you struggled, or these are the things I wasn't happy with. And it's like anything else. I mean, again, I know everyone's pressed for time, but you can say, difficult things in a professional way and not be personal. Yes, information quicker and better information would help our association and members. And again, the better officials, they'll take criticism, they'll look at themselves in the mirror. I've done it many times in all 3 sports. And you got to be honest with yourself and say, hey, I need to do better at this because it's coming up multiple times in a season. It's obviously there. And
it also gives you the ability to, as the head of the association, to go to that official and say, hey, listen, I'm here to work with you on these things to make you better. I said, this isn't a lost cause here. Let's look at it in reality. I mean, the aggregate for you is, a little higher, but let's work on these 1 or 2 things here and then move from there. It's, we're in the education business. And if you can't educate your officials on what's wrong, not till after the fact, they're going to forget it 9 months later when they start the new season.
No, that's a great point. When we get our final ratings, when we get the playoff ratings, right at the end of the season, and then we give it about a month for everything else to trickle in, then we get another set of ratings, which is what we call the final ratings. But by that time, my lacrosse officials, they might be looking forward to football in the fall or soccer in the fall. And, hey, that season's over. I'm gone and move on. You're right. We miss the window of opportunity to educate and train in the season.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm going to commend Marty on what he actually does. And I know this because I get a copy of it. What he does, he takes his own personal final rating. He takes it apart and explains what each number means and why it's there and how it's come up with. And he shares it with the association so other officials understand what coaches are looking at. And if, sometimes you got to take a look in the mirror and say, hey, I didn't do this, and that's why this happened the way it did. And, without Marty saying that in it, but it teaches you how to self-correct. And, I have to say 5 years ago, it's when one of my first games as a white hat referee. Coach sent film in on me, okay, that I missed a call, and I did. And what happened was he sent the film into our interpreter. Interpreter reached out to me. We sat down and talked about it. And God is my witness. I looked at the film and I said, yes, I gave up. Not that I gave up, but I didn't finish the play. And because I didn't finish the play, I missed the play. All right. It's not over till the whistle blows. We're the first ones to say that, right? So follow it around until it's done. And then when he showed me that film, I never, ever, ever again in 5 years, countless plays following that, did that ever happen again, because I learned, because I took respect in what my responsibility was. And going back to what Marty said initially, is that's what we all have to do as officials. If everybody did that, it might be an easier way to go.
Marty brought up a good point about praise. We only hear the negatives. When we get a 1 rating or a 0 rating or whatever it is, that's when the phone calls start. And of course, you're going to sit around and go, I'm getting beat up, and I think I did a halfway decent job. But if you did do a good job in the game, are you hearing about those things as well? Well, they started doing it in Section 11 with the schools, school-to-school rating, where, hey, excellent coach sent by the opposing coach, excellent fans, excellent this. But with the official, it's, oh, they did it again to me, and we're screwed again. And then, so when you're just getting nothing but negative feedback, that's how we can also help to change the perspective, is to recognize good officiating immediately, not as a part of a rating that you see 6 months later to say you got off, or you just happen to be working a playoff game. Obviously they liked you during the year. I think just communication is so lacking between officials, ADs, coaches, superintendents, Board of Educations, spectators. We've got to find ways to get everybody to hear the same message. And that's what we're going to kind of work on. I know we've been going about an hour. Carl, did you want to say something? I saw you lean in a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, from officiating standpoint, when you said about praise, the biggest phrase that last year we were walking off the field and this team got blown out, right? As we're walking to our cars, one father walked up to us and said, I'm on the losing team, but you guys did a great job as officials. And that's all we want.
That's great.
That's all we want to hear. And all of our guys, we thank them, and we appreciate that, and I think as officials, you have to leave your ego in the locker room, and be able to take criticism from your crew members, right? No matter how bad it is or how good it is, right? You're man enough, you're there to do a job, right? And that's what my crew does. We criticize each other.
Or woman enough.
What's that?
Or woman enough.
That's right. That's right.
Going back to what you said, I don't, Carl, I think we use the word criticism only because that's just the word that everybody uses, but I really don't think that's the word we want to use. The word we want to use is that we're using as an educational tool to improve. And, there's no negativity with the guys that I know, that when they get a response or somebody says, hey, you missed it, or what and it's not even we say we missed. What we say is, what did you see? Tell me what you saw, and then we could talk about it. So, those are the kind of things that, make you better, but you have to be open-minded and willing to accept, like Carl said, to be able to accept that input, not who are you to tell me that X, Y, and Z. So again, leave your ego at home. Don't even bring it with you to the field. Leave it at home.
I think those are great points. I'm thinking about the future for something like this. Hopefully we get a lot of people to listen to and watch the podcast on YouTube. And I want to be able to bring you guys back at some point, but I want to include a coach or two. And maybe if I can find an AD, if it's actually working now, not someone like me, and maybe even a parent, and start to get some perspective a little more. So I'm going to think about how we're going to do that. But would you guys be amenable to that if I wanted to bring you back on?
100.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I like that. I'll send you the checks. You guys get all, I'll send the checks in the mail for that one. As soon as I get a sponsor, I guess I'll have to wait that.
Good,
But,
man. The bottom line here, Jim, is if we could send a message out there that people understand it's not us against them. We're all in this together, and we want to have the best product on the field. Because the bottom line is we go out, and everyone, the three guys that are on the screen will tell you, we're not doing it for the money. We're doing it for the enjoyment of the game, to see the smile on the face, and to understand that we have an influence on a child's life. Everything we do, we lead by example. We talk with respect. They learn about authority. They learn about discipline. We're the third team, right? Marty's out there with his three guys in the playoff, extra guys in the playoffs, and they talk and communicate to get it right. We are on the field. There's five of us. We talk and communicate to get it right. We're another team, just like they do. Everybody works hard and needs to respect the efforts. So there's no bad guy. It's just that I don't want, maybe it's just misunderstood or whatever the case may be. I'm trying to put out an olive branch right there. But at the same time, that we're trying to get to the bottom of the cause to fix the problem. That's what this is about. It's not the blame game. It's what do we need to do to correct the problem? We're all fathers, right? We have an issue in our own home. Get to the cause, fix the problem, and you go forward. That's what we're trying to do here. So you invite the parent, you invite the coach, you invite the AD. Let's all get on the screen together, talk about it. We'll learn from them. They'll learn from us. They'll see that it's all about everybody getting together.
I think my goal, the goal I have and most of us have is if we could get people to listen to things like you guys are saying, and maybe have one parent stop and check themselves at each school, just one less. That's 60 less parents in Suffolk County. That's 50 some odd less parents in Nassau County. 100%. And if all of a sudden you times that by 11, that's 60 by 11. Now you got 700 or 800 parents that were a problem, maybe thinking about that themselves, that maybe I'm the problem a little bit. And then officials looking at it and saying, you know what, maybe I do have one less cheeseburger and get up and down the field. I get that because the guys say they're working with me on that. You know what I mean? So I really and truly can't thank you guys enough for coming on today. Is there anything anybody wants to close with briefly? Because I want to make sure nobody turns this off after 15 minutes,
No, Jim, just thanks for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it immensely and look forward to doing it again.
Thanks, Marty.
A great open forum.
Great, Carl. Thank you, Mark.
Well, I'll agree with both my partners here, my colleagues, that this is an opportunity to share wisdom, and that's where we got to go with it.
Well, on behalf of the New York State Athletic Administrators Association, you're the first officials I've ever interviewed. And I don't know anybody else that's doing officials right now as far as interviews go. So, they're all talking to ADs to make them better. They're all talking to here to make them better. Nobody's talking to the officials, and we want to start that dialogue with you guys and keep it going. So I want to bring a few more sports in maybe. So hear more of the women's sides. I know you do girls basketball, Marty, but let's talk about that too, because the pressure's there as well with that. So with that in mind, guys, I want to thank you for coming on. This is the AD Vantage Point coming to you from the bunker at Walt Whitman High School right now. But we're gonna break out a little bit and hopefully have a great fall. The season starts for us in a little less than 2 weeks now. August 22nd, they kick it into gear. But I wish you guys the best in your seasons. Good luck with everything, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Coach.
God bless you all out there in the listening audience. And we definitely will catch up real soon. But thank you so much to all out there for listening to the AD Vantage Point on Spotify, on YouTube, and on Apple Podcasts. Thank you.